Welcome, everybody, to our second Saturday's poetry reading. My name is Dan Kerr, and I have the privilege of being your moderator for this monthly poetry series hosted by Kathy Donnelly. We start reasonably promptly at about 11 o'clock. If you would like to enter, if you'd like to read a little bit later on, we do have an open read after our featured reader. Just put your name in chat, and I'll get you on the list when you put your name in chat. Anyone who is chat challenged will come around at the end to make sure everyone who wants to read gets an opportunity to read. Please keep your microphone muted. I don't see Judy Turek with us today, but she wrote a poem about barking dogs and ringing phones and people knocking on the door. So by keeping your microphone muted, then it's a respect to your fellow poets and it minimizes the background noise. Feedback is a gift. Kathy and I are always interpreting the feedback that we get. So if you have any feedback, good, bad, as I say to my students, you don't have to always just say it's good. I like it the way it is and it's great. You can say, hey, you really could improve this by doing this, So feedback is a gift. So Daniel B. Kerr at Verizon.net. We look forward to your feedback. Planned agenda, I'll spend a couple of minutes to get you started, get us all settled. I'll turn it over to Kathy, who will read and introduce Karen. We'll have Karen as our featured poet. Then we'll go into the open read with the names that are entered in chat. And then we will bring Karen back for an encore. We usually start at 11, we go till 12. If we have a lot of people that want to read, sometimes we go a little bit after 12, but we'll see how it goes. But we should be done by 12 or 12:15 would be my guess. And then I'll bring back Kathy after the encore to any concluding remarks that she might have, and also to announce the next featured poet in April. This is not a program for evangelization, but there are a number of things that we do at Historic All Souls Church in Stony Brook. As Kathy mentioned in our opening comments there, we do monthly concerts. And the concert, interesting, coming up on April 6th, the woman to the left, Laura Lessard, she is actually the great-granddaughter of Stanford White, who's the one who designed the building. So that's a guitar duo. She's also the daughter of a very famous composer, also named Lessard. The guy on the right is head of the guitar program at C.W. Post University. We do those concerts monthly. We do the second Saturdays each month. That happens to be a picture when we did it in the church. And we also do Native American drumming once a month as well. If you're interested in learning more about these programs, either just send me an email or go to the church's website. There are a couple of things that are of particular interest to the poets. Once a year, we combine poetry. You'll recognize many of the poets standing on the altar there. We combine poetry, we combine music with students from the university. And you look in the back row there, the gentleman with the headband, that's our Native American drummer. So we combine all three. And what we do is we have sacred readings that go back through the centuries in chronological order. And then after each of those, we have a musical interlude. So we need poets to read. So if you're interested in reading at that, this is in the church. Just send me an email and we'll try to get you scheduled. We're always looking for readers. That's on July 6th. And the last thing I'll mention, Kathy had said at the outset that we used to meet in the church, which is a beautiful chapel, but it's up at the top of a hill. And we know we have people that cannot make it up that hill. Plus, the church does not have a bathroom. So we say we meet people where they are and we don't provide them with a place to go to the bathroom. We got to send them down the hill to go to the local restaurant. So this race that we do, it's a 5K race and a 2K walk that we do every year. That celebrates the role of the church in the community and also raises funds to make the church accessible and to add a bathroom to the back of the church. We've made a lot of progress over the last 5 years. We've dedicated all proceeds from the race to go to that purpose, to put in a ramp for accessibility and to put a bathroom. We've raised over $100,000. We now have a consensus on a design that's been approved by the diocese. We're in the process of filing for permits. So those of you who have been waiting for that day, we can report that we are indeed making progress on that. Okay, so again, welcome. And at this point, I will turn it over to Kathy. Kathy, they're all yours. Kathy, you got to turn your mic on. Just give her a second to find her mic. Should be near the bottom. Okay.
Unmute. Here we go. Okay, so I need the slide of John Williams' poem.
It's on the screen now.
Okay. Okay. So first of all, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I know Saturday mornings can be for a lot of different things, but we don't have to start. Oh, there's Margaret, who will be next month. And Gladys is here. Great, great, great. Bruce, oh my goodness, and Chris Javier. We have a great group. Karen for you. This is a really talented people that'll be listening to your talent today. I'm going to start by reading a poem that I just love. And I have the supreme privilege and permission to submit this poem to Tammy's anthology. It's someone who can't do it themselves, but they're still with us, and his name is John Williams. And if you know Ginger Williams, then John A. Williams is her husband, history professor, retired, and he wrote a book of poems that are narrative poems, the way Dan likes to write, and this one just really grabbed me. It's called Deconstructing Once Upon a Time. When I was 9, the stories I read all began once upon. None of these things ever happened twice, it seemed. But the children probably got lost in the woods quite often. A time the stories continued, apparently centuries ago. Some of the stories seem to occur around 1538, or even a century or two earlier. It was a time of turmoil, but a brave warrior defeated evil, and a just king regained his throne. At the end, things were better, but still without central heating or mass-produced consumer goods. Then, usually, in a far-off land. How did they know? It depended on where I was while I was reading the story. The pictures indicated strongly that it was Western Europe, but no ordinary place. Wales, maybe. I always wished there was a dimension of reality where all the stories were still going on and I could go see if they were true. My brother said if the universe was infinite, then there was. So that's a poem by John A. Williams and from a book called Skipping Stones. Margaret's snapping her fingers, something they did in the city, right? Not to disturb people when they wanted to clap after poetry. And so now I have the privilege of, I have to say, inspired to get to know Karen better and then wanting her to read for us because I picked up her book and I read it and could not put it down. It's extraordinary. If anyone is drawn to any of the stories that revolved around Nazi Germany, this is something that draws you in. Karen Schulte is a retired social worker and therapist who began writing in grade school full-time since retirement. She has had her poetry published in a number of journals and anthologies, including Long Island Quarterly, Poetica, Patterson Review, Bard's Annual, PPA Literary Review, Almanac Volumes 2 and 3. She has always participated in poet Virginia Walker's poetry symposiums sponsored by the Shelter Island Library. Her collection of poetry, Where Desire Settles, won first place in the Writer's Digest nationwide contest for a self-published book of poetry in 2017. Her chapbook, Black Paper Album, that's the one I read, was published by Finishing Line Press in March of 2023. I am very proud to announce Karen Schulte to read for the next bit.
Thank you so much. And I'm very happy to be here today. And the poems, of course, I'll read, as you said, come from my chapbook, Black Paper Album. During the pandemic, I rediscovered these old photo albums, especially some of them with the first half of the 20th century, and they were basically falling apart because they were posted on this black crepe paper that couldn't hold them after a certain amount of time. So I set aside time to repair and save them, concentrating on the 1940s and the 1950s, the years I was growing up. These poems are an attempt to capture the spirit of that time and that place, both in New York City and in a little village in the foothills of the Catskill Mountains, known as the Borscht Belt. At that time, it wasn't, but it got to be known as the Borscht Belt. And the first poem I'm going to read is from my book, and it's entitled Black Paper Album. My fingers run over the crumbling edges of black photo paper, the album's soft binding held together with hand-tied string is coming apart. Inside, fasteners have lost their grip, the glue on the back of ancient snapshots fast disappearing. Old photographs no longer secure fall page after page, the cascade of them from my father's youth. He and his brothers stand arm in arm in the courtyard of their Hebrew orphanage, anchored to each other, their own fortress against whatever lies ahead. Turn more pages, more yellowed pictures fall. The 20th century moves on, becomes undone. My mother's family, people I have forgotten or who have died, tumble out, no longer attached to time or place. My mother, with her slick bob, slim and fashionable, leans against her parents' porch railing, looking pensive. Her sister sits in a wicker chair, pregnant and peaceful. My uncles in soldier uniform, proud to be first-generation American, stare at me with pride. The youngest one play acts with his bayonet while smiling for the camera. Even pictures of family dogs I have almost forgotten pose looking serene. And for a while, we were. My father's brothers, my mother's family, cousins I no longer see, even my brother so young, swinging his baseball bat with joy and vigor. All these images are now between self-adhesive, acid-free pages with new captions underneath, securing them for a new century, bound to a different time with different sorrows, leaving remnants of the past with traces of the future. This next, thank you. This next poem is called Alchemy. It's about my grandparents, my mother's parents. And they were always a bit of a mystery to me. They stand next to each other in this old photograph, separated by inches exactly the same from top to bottom, as if tailor-made by an invisible marker. They look straight at the camera, smiling and proud in their best clothes, waiting for a celebration. This is how I remember them, side by side, never touching, at least never seen by me. At home, even their beds were narrow twins with a night table and 2 lamps between, a bedroom for roommates, not a long married couple. My grandfather, tall and slim, handsome with a shock of white hair. Grandma at his side, short and round, never at a loss for words in Yiddish or any other language she could muster. They seemed to have lived in 2 separate worlds while together in one. There was some rumor their marriage was an arrangement. It may have been so, but they appeared to be content. Whatever they had, it was more than they bargained for at a time when there was no way of knowing what lies ahead when you cross an ocean as wide as the Atlantic. But here they stand, posed together, as inexplicable as if they landed on Mars, flung from some dying planet to a place they could never imagine, where a sideways glance and grit could turn dross to gold or an ordinary stone to something like marble. This is called picture taking. There is sadness in my mother's eyes, a sorrow caught by the camera, held by my father. Taken in black and white, a snapshot, one of many, still sharp with her image. My father in another looks exhausted, but resigned, sits on a park bench, holding me propped beside him, wrapped in my baby bunting blanket, waiting for my mother and the perfect moment she'll take my picture. Somewhere in these photos is the clue to what came after, when I was no longer the center and driving spoke of a wheel, always turning in the same groove, unaware of the cyclical force of the past, my parents' fears, memories I knew nothing of, only the thrill that day held high above my father's knee, with a look on my face of exuberant joy, or a rush, perhaps, of terror. This one is called Rembrandt's Camera. And the photograph is beautiful. It was so lovingly shaded, and I had no idea if my father really knew what he was doing when he took it, but it's a beautiful photograph. Rembrandt's Camera. A bonnet holds my face, tilted upward in this portrait of my 3-year-old self, seated on a bench outside my grandfather's store. My grandfather sits at one end, his white Spitz dog in between, lit against deepening shadows, an illumination worthy of an artist of light and shade. Grandpa, with his white wavy hair, looks straight ahead, on his lips a smile about to happen, stopped short by some thought he could only reveal to himself. Rembrandt would have been proud to paint us. My grandfather, with his first American grandchild, but it was only my father taking pictures whenever he could, who pointed that box camera at the precise moment and snapped us, sitting so peacefully. And this is a poem called Summer Ice. And it wasn't from a photograph in an album. It's a poem that I wrote some years ago about the wonderful home that my aunt made and where we could all gather and be kids and have fun. It's called Summer Ice. We were always together come summer in the White House on the sloping hill in a village no longer there. Days when all there was to do was gather around the kitchen table, 5 small children in mid-morning glare, fine dust gathering overhead, while my Aunt Esther's manicured hands whisked milk, eggs, and sugar in a bowl until thickened, the cream round and deep, ready for the freezer until pure vanilla ice cream, iced for our spoons to scrape the surface soft enough for the tasting. Even the white liquid melted on the bottom was scooped into our mouths, sweetly thickened. It rolled off our tongues to our lips and chins, much of it on clothes and fingers, weighing us down until we collapsed, became anchored in spirit and bone, slept like the children we were, wrapped in our own measured breathing. And this is called At the Edge. And it is a story that really happened and was pretty scary at the time that it did. Crossing the George Washington Bridge, driving along old Route 17, my father rolled the chrome green Chevy through the biting winds of late November's Thanksgiving Day weekend with a precision of grave concentration. The twists in the road along the two-way highway became narrower. My father, then my mother, fell silent. The radio went dim to a dull hum as my mother squinted her eyes looking for the turnoff on the far side of the hills, her childhood stretching before her, not always welcoming, but she knew those turns around the bend just where the river came into view, shrouded that day by a fog so thick memory only worked until it didn't. The curve was sudden, the drop from the precipice steep. Headlines separated into small pinpoints. Nothing could be seen to guide us, leaving two children cowering, my mother clinging to her seat. Almost at the guardrail, my father hit the brakes and stopped the cars. Onward slide to the valley below, its hills wrapped in darkening halos, where all we could do was sit in fear, unable to see the plunge, imagine falling into thick, soggy mist, feel the numbness of body and soul, suddenly finding ourselves secure in our seats, the wilderness behind us, never talking about what happened, except in the backdrop of interrupted dreams before we pushed on in silence, traveling further than we wanted to go. And this is called Lost Keys. And it's a story about what my mom did, which was so out of character that even though I was very small, I still remember it. My mother didn't look back. She just kept climbing up the fire escape ladder, leaving me below holding her shopping bag, wondering what to do next if I had to. But I was only 5 or 4 and knew nothing, remained riveted to the spot where I stood, watched as she worked her way up, slowly, deliberately, steadying herself on her brown scuffed pumps, one narrow trend after another on those tapered strips of rusted metal, 3 stories up, never looking down, before she lifted the bedroom window, let herself drop over the edge, waved to me from inside to come home the proper way, through the vestibule, up heavy stairs, while she retrieved her keys, cool in the palm of her hand. And this is called Dance Lessons. Once a week, riding the D train, a group of 13-year-old girls from uptown, serious and determined, dance bags slung over shoulders, leotards and leggings coiled in neat rolls, travel underground with a purpose. Almost an hour to West 4th Street, walk past Broadway to a squat brick building whose cage-like elevator carries them to a bare studio, its battered piano in a corner, students warming up, cross-legged on a gleaming wooden floor, others at the bar wait to take seated positions for the teacher's ceaseless counts of contract, release, spiral, and fall, and one, and to over again until it seeps into their very being. They bend and rotate positions, move according to space, bodies intuitive, fluid, lean, and persistent, push against gravity, aware each pose tells a story, pounded into muscle and spine, pour grace and strength into every inch of concentration, gather all they can of speed and desire, inhale deeply, glide through thin air until grounded, centered, still. Thank you. This is called red taffeta. The girl in the red taffeta dress perches on a flowered armchair in a well-draped living room. It holds her smiling image, the dress curled above her knees, white crinoline slip flouncing underneath. At 16, she knows she outshines her mother, who is somewhere beyond her vision, watching her posing for the camera. She thinks she is lovely but unsure. Her red lips, dark hair gleam with possibility, foreign to her but not to others. Staring into the camera, she smiles because she is told to. When she finally stands, her dress flares from her waist, moves with the motion of her hips. She will remember this day, not because it's a brother's bar mitzvah, but as a moment anchored in yesterday's tale. She no longer believes and chooses to ignore. Mostly, she'll remember the sway of the dress against her hips, 50s music flaring forth, his hand on the small of her back, sliding down, and the piercing look in her mother's eyes. And here's my last poem, called Fault Lines. The child she once was thought her world would end in fire. She feared the frayed wire, lit match, burning pot, until she put her mind to other things, grew into her young body, found herself immersed in everyday routine, grown-up struggles, moving along fault lines, hidden so deep, with bits and pieces of debris from the past barely visible, leaving traces of lost causes, old griefs, whose shadows stretch long and everlasting. Thank you so much.
That was great, Karen. Really just lovely. Just all the imagery, starting with the black paper album and the pictures falling out and the conch and the photos, and you're trying to capture them in time. And the poem about alchemy and the rumor that of the arranged marriage and the two bedrooms. I was thinking of Leave It to Beaver in all those years where they always had the married couple at the two beds, and the picture taking, the sadness in your mother's eyes and reminding
Yes.
parents often shield their sorrows from their children. And then the Rembrandt camera, thinking of your dad with the box camera. And I remember from my own youth all those pictures I have that were taken by my aunt with the box camera. And then the summer ice, that was clearly thinking of you as a young girl and all those kids having fun, and the taste of the ice cream. And at the edge, boy, I was almost thinking of Jim Morrison's Riders on the Storm, how dark and scary that was. And the lost keys and the dance lessons, all the thoughts of those 13-year-old girls. You didn't mention they were squealing on the train, but perhaps they did. And the red taffeta dress and the 16-year-old and the look of disapproval on her mother's face in her mother's eyes. So just well done. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're going to switch over now to we'll bring Karen back for an encore. And we're going to switch now over to the open read. And with the open read, please only one poem. And if you have one poem, please no more than 5 minutes. Keep your microphone muted until you are called upon. Kathy will close the program And I'll announce the readers in groups of 3, so I know who has already signed up. So please listen for the groups of 3, and your name will be called. Let me clear the screen here. And you'll have to turn your mic on when it's your time to read. So Marvin, you are our lead up. You're our leadoff hitter, Marvin. So it's Marvin, Chris, and then Marguerite. So Marvin, over to you.
Okay, Daniel. Someone mentioned Sanford White at the beginning of the program. And when my wife and I were first married, we lived in the Sanford White building called the Chatsworth, the last building on West 72nd Street, facing Riverside Park, and we had views of the Hudson. So that was very nice. Secondly, this poem is not about an elementary or a junior high school kid, but about a high school kid. So here we go. It's called With Hamlet. He walks with Hamlet through subway rumble, where painted songs sing Broadway bards. Between Tarryton lights and Driston drops, Ophelia sways, drugged with loss. She gives away her rosemary and her rue. He walks with Hamlet the street peeling, potato chip bags, crushed cokes, palm readings, and the thin man bopping, gravity magician. Alas, poor Yorick, Hamlet sees the skull. He walks with Hamlet the dark hall air full of cats. Under the steps, the man still sleeping with staring eyes. The babies cry, the babies cry. Ophelia floats away. He walks with Hamlet, his mother nods, father slouches. Jesus watches from the wall. Tomato paste, beans, beans, supper's done. On the table, Hamlet thrusts. Hamlet falls. Horatio waits. Lights out. The bed groans, bodies full. Hamlet rests. Sirens wail. The babies cry. Smoke curls. The sleeping man stares in cat air. Tomorrow, Macbeth.
Thank you, Marvin. Appreciate that. And now we're over to Chris.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, here you go. Side by side, a smooth criminal leans forward like an italic lowercase I and extends his arm to the cash register and typing a code on the dusty keyboard with his black leather glove. Ka-ching. The drawer pops out. Immediately he grabs a handful of fives, ones, tens, 20s in one swoop, like a claw machine. Drop them in his black laundry palace bag and dashed in his black 574s by New Balance. Pushes the door and ran through the wind that blows some of the cash back in the 99-cent store. The cashier shows up and found cash on the floor and the register closed shut. Confused, he opens the drawer to find that it's almost empty, but he found a yellow Post-it written in black Sharpie. I got fired for nothing. I got a family to feed. He took a deep breath and remained stoic, shook his head in disappointment, and murmured God's name with his head down, walking towards the fallen cash to pick them up. And after that, he looks at the cash and said, and I have to go home to my family in an hour. It was only 8 p.m. then. How long was he sleeping in the back of the store? Business was dead anyway. The stolen money was yesterday's profit. Poem.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, Marguerite, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for a wonderful afternoon of poetry. This is a new poem called Still. Still, only my footprints, steps remain when the tide rolls in. Jason Chan. I still miss you every day. Still wish it a nightmare. That day I realized you were gone. I still want one more time to tell you everything I never got to say. Still close my eyes and vision yours staring back at me. I still remember memories, the few I have of you. Still keep moments inside my heart, these footprints left by you. I still can't believe you're no longer here. Still find it hard to accept passings of time, all the sunrises and sunsets without you inside. I still feel jealousy, like girlfriends of your past that had you in their arms once. Still envious of angels and of God because they hold you now. I still feel the emptiness of alone, still remain single. A night star missing from my sky, refuse to let you burn out from my existence, alive in memory still.
Thank you, Marguerite. Okay, next group of three is Judith, followed by Mike Daly, followed by Megan Dausch. So let's start with Judith.
Okay, thank you. And good to be here today. I was moved to read this poem because Mike held his book up earlier and it was mentioned service. Screaming eagle, engine roaring, he grips the cord, steps up and jumps through the doorway, heart thumping, hears himself yell, Geronimo, falls freeform downward through darkness, pulls, and the parachute opens. A mushroom above clouds as he descends through space. And it isn't like when the astronauts saw the Earth as a brilliant jewel in a velvet black sky. As he holds the strap with the same hand that wrote the postcard to his mother, flying through space above Earth, suspended in the void, my father arrives in blackness of night to fight Nazis in hand-to-hand combat, his boots hitting French soil.
Thank you. Very, very, very moving. Mike Daly.
Good morning, all. I'm in the process of editing a bunch of children's poems that I hope to get published this year. So I've had trouble picking one, but I found one that I wrote about my grandkids, and it's written from the perspective of my granddaughter. It's called Brother, Sister. He's a bouncer. I'm a faller. He is shorter, but I am taller. He is younger, I am older. I like cold. He likes colder. He can bounce high on his bed. When I bounce, I bump my head. His hair's long, but mine is longer. He is strong, but I am stronger. His hair's dark, mine is light. He just scribbles. I can write. He can run without a care. I can trip on nothing there. He's built tough. I'm built lighter. I'm a pleaser. He's a fighter. He can catch and he can throw. He is good. I'm just so. But I can sing and I can dance. He would rather not wear pants. He's allergic. He can't eat any eggs or nut-based treat. He's as happy as he can be. But I wish he could eat just like me. I'm like Daddy. He's like Mom. I can't sit still. I don't do calm. But he can sit and simply play quietly the whole darn day. I can ride a two-wheel bike. he can't even steer his trike. He likes balls, all shapes and size, and any dare from me he tries. He'll slide down a slide face down. When I try this, I kiss the ground. He'll climb way out on a limb. I won't climb as high as him. He'll leap from heights, then tuck and roll. To simply hop is my whole goal. We like to paint, we like to draw, and talk about the things we saw. There is nothing we won't try. Brother, sister, he and I. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Well done. Okay, Megan, over to you.
I would like a copy of your book, Mike, for all the children that I know.
Megan?
Thank you. Great to be here. This poem is called Longing. I want to be a forest, a natural refuge. Let the chatter and chirp of life lilt through me. I yearn to be a place of growth, with roots that run deep and spread wide, to honor the lifespans of the blossoms that flourish and wither inside me, of the butterflies flitting and fleeting, of the bristlecone pine, witnessing my lifespan over centuries, of the violent storms cracking through me, changing my landscape, whose wrath feels endless but will ease. I want to contain streams of thought that join rivers, hydrate earth, not fear the fires that will come for me and the people that will chop me down. I wish to be enough, to thrive in spite of knowing fear coils under trees stretching for the future. I want to remain unmapped, mysteries pulsing, layers partnering to better the world. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan. Well done. Okay, next group of three is Claude, followed by James, followed by Dan Kerr. So Claude, over to you.
Today, my friends, we're on a hot streak. Some great poetry straight through from Karen on to us. So this poem is about my first friend, Eugene. Today would be his birthday. He was born March 9th, 1948. And we grew up in Rockaway. For those who aren't from New York, it's where I lived, about 3 blocks wide between the ocean and the bay. So I've been an ocean baby all my life. And this poem was written on Eugene's birthday in 2001. But today he would be 76. Okay, Eugene. Today would have been your 53rd birthday, 2 days younger than my sister. My first friend in the world that I recall. So, age 4.5, playing King of the Mountain, smacking me on the head with your toy gun, making me bleed, run back home, killing bees in the lot between your house and Dennis Garfinkel's, with brown bags on our hands. Your father never trusted you, a brutal narcissist, always immaculately groomed, impressed with his physique. That day, in my basement, he called you out, not wanting you to stay indoors at anyone's home, lest you would wreak havoc. My mother loving you, not agreeing with him. He kicking you with all his might at the base of the spine. You only 8 then. Crying outside. I still shocked today by his abusive behavior. You were having sex with girls at age 12. I feeling jealous, amazed. 1 year older than you, yet unable to match your prowess. You escaped from your parents by joining the army at 16, getting married to a desperate woman, the youngest of 10 children, who immediately moved north to live with your mother. hard of hearing, hoarse-voiced smoker, but friendly and kind. Soon you were divorced. My family moved from Rockaway. Life spun me through college and medical school, surfing the world, working in different places. A few years ago, I tried to reach you. Heard you were employed at a pizzeria in Bell Harbor. Next year's call, you were dead. AIDS had beset you. Your experience too premature. My first best friend, running down the football field with me, skating behind Stevie Harris's, body surfing past the older folks, straining at the barrel rope. On a hot summer day, your amblyopic eye and handsome smile, not enough to provide you with a long, safe life. Your father, Ben, ruining your childhood that I recall so fondly now.
Claude. Right. Powerful imagery. James, over to you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, election horn haiku. After inspection, who should be the selection for each election? When names would be viewed, the desire to include those who had fought in a feud, tossed coin into air, sides combined constitute pair. Both were hard to bear. Too much BS fed, wanted winner who had led, so I voted for God instead. Amen.
Yeah, next reader is Dan Kerr. And this poem, if you've read Moby Dick, or if you have seen Caddyshack, this will resonate with you perhaps. And it's called The Squirrel at 7 Acorn Lane. Here goes. In the first chapter of Genesis, God gave man dominion over the animals. Throughout history, several animals have exerted their dominion over foolish men. Ahab forsook the mission of his voyage, and Moby Dick sank his ship and drowned all but one of his crew. Bill Murray deployed superior firepower in Caddyshack and blew up the greens in the golf course that he maintained. And the squirrel of 7 Acorn Lane shattered my fantasy of a happy home and turned me into an assassin. Many years ago, I was looking to buy a house. As we pulled into 7 Acorn Lane, a cute little squirrel was eating an acorn in the front yard. I said, "He's here to welcome us to our new home," as the real estate agent smiled. The bucolic image of the squirrel welcoming us to our new home began to unravel as my first wife and I separated. Sitting in the den one day, I heard a chewing sound, and when I knocked on the ceiling, I heard the pitter-patter of little feet. The exterminator came and listened to my story. "Let's look outside and see what's in your ceiling." There were holes chewed in the shingles on both sides of the house. He said, "The squirrels have moved in. We put down poison that destroys the lining of their stomachs. And if you are lucky, they'll die outside." I thought of my cute little furry friend eating an acorn. Can't you just drop leaflets and tell them to move out or do something else? Filled with remorse and guilt, I reluctantly gave the order to spread the poison. When I found a dead squirrel outside a couple of weeks later, I grieved and buried him with dignity. My grief turned to anger as I began to repair the damage. The squirrel must have known the length of my ladder did not reach either of the two holes. The squirrel must have known they no longer make the shingles on my house that he chewed. As I drove from lumberyard to lumberyard in search of the right shingles, my anger burned more brightly. Several frustrating weekends later, the damage was repaired and all was well. No need to worry further about my former little furry friend. Much to my horror, the squirrel came back, and he came back with a vengeance. All my hard work was destroyed. He chewed 2 new holes in my painstaking reconstruction. Anger had already replaced grief. Now hate and vengeance filled the air. I nailed a piece of aluminum siding over the one hole and stuffed the other one with bricks. This furry little bastard would find no path to enter my home at 7 Acorn Lane.
That's what you think.
His invasion routes blocked. The squirrel moved on to the rest of the house. He kept chewing and chewing and chewing, searching for an entry point in areas no ladder would ever reach. As I pulled into my driveway, I often saw him sitting on the roof, smiling and mocking me. Every time I opened the back door to confront him, he heard me coming and ran. I channeled my inner Ahab as I shouted, "This squirrel doth task me." One day I left a loaded .22 rifle in the backyard and took a long walk. The squirrel did not see as I picked up the gun. Our eyes met for a moment before he jumped from the house to the safety of a nearby tree. The bullet I fired found him in mid-flight. I cheered as he fell dead and returned to my home to reflect on what I had done. Grief did not reappear after I fired. Anger and vengeance still ruled that day. Later, I went outside to hang him up as an example to the rest of the squirrels. Much to my surprise, his body was nowhere to be found. Perhaps the other squirrels had carried him away as a Viking. Many years later, the squirrels and I live in peace, and I frequently cite the wisdom of squirrels. Look both ways when you cross the road. Plan ahead. Spend time in the woods. Eat plenty of fiber, and it's okay to be a little nuts. After I pulled the trigger that fateful day, word got out in the squirrel community. Don't screw with that guy at 7 Acorn Lane. Although I'm still very fond of Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, where God gave man dominion over the animals, I've learned that life is better when we are at peace with our furry little friends. Amen. Okay, thank you. Our next group is a group of 3, but I've only got 2 on it so far, so we'll go around and I'll check chat and we'll give everyone else a chance to read after these 2. So next we have Gladys Henderson, followed by Shu. Gladys, over to you. Gladys, you got to turn your mic on. Gladys, your mic, you got to turn your mic on, Gladys. It's at the bottom. There you go.
Is it better now?
Yes, you're on.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it. So, this is a boat ride that I took 15 miles out to sea on a mailboat to Monhegan Island, Maine. And it's pretty arduous, and if it's out to sea, so it can get really rough in the water. The ocean breaks green when it strikes the island, foams with white, angry spit. A small trawler has stalled our arrival. The crew tries to offload quickly, but the force of the waves makes it difficult a task. The bow bangs against the dock as if it is an enraged creature that wants to escape. Our captain circles the landing ramp, passing through whirlpools of waves he has created. The hull pitches violently, a roller coaster that has lost its track. A few passengers still standing lock their knees to avoid falling. We are like a school of fish swimming the harbor, circling closed rank, changing directions with the force of the tide. The mate tells me it doesn't matter if you fall in. You will die from hypothermia before you drown. I ask for a life preserver anyway. Tell him I'll take my chances. I decide to escape my worries during those roller coaster moments by reminiscing. I think of the cedars and their lush aroma in the wind, the softness of your hand in mine as you walked me up the hill. Sea fog as it moved off the ocean, and flow down the main road, incensing the Vaughan house where we stay. Beach roses climbing the trellis, just as it was in the Wyeth painting. The pantry with spices whose Tuesday bites dates were 20 years prior. The lights that were all gas, when you lit them, they popped, turned high till you tapered them down. And that nectarine pie, perhaps the best I would make. So scrumptious and sweet, with the fragrance of ripe fruit, butter, and cinnamon. Oh my, how delicious the tides of waiting and the savor of their luscious inconvenience.
Thank you, Gladys. Well done. Okay, Shu, and then we'll have Bob H. Shu, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Finally, the weather is getting warm. So, today I'm going to read my poem. The title is Found. In darkness, I discovered peace. In sadness, I sought solace. In suffering, I found purpose. In struggle, I gained strength. In desperation, I unearthed love. And in love, I found myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Shu. Well done. Okay, over to Bob H. Bob, yeah, we're not hearing any sound on you, Bob. Your mic is off. Your mic is on, but I'm not getting any sound. Now you're off. Now you're on. Still can't hear you, Bob. Okay. All right, we'll come back to Bob. We'll give him a chance later on. It could be the sound setting on your computer. That's the only thing I can think of, the little microphone, the little speaker on the bottom. Okay, so let's go around now. Let me put this in full view. And Kathy, if you could help me here. If there's anyone else who wanted to read, who hasn't had a chance to read? Okay, Virginia, great. Virginia, you got to remember to turn your mic on. Should be on the bottom of the screen, Virginia. Right, there you are.
I think I got it. Okay, first of all, apologies to Gladys, Daniel, all Episcopalians, all Catholics, because I think what I'm going to read is not traditional belief. But again, it's a very open church, right? And by the way, Gladys, I took that same journey, but there was no nectarine pie. Marvelous.
Too bad. Yum, 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 yum.
Okay, this little poem of a non-traditional belief, a lost soul, is called Lust in the Dust. February of 2024 knocked our old Catholic world. Ash Wednesday and Valentine's Day fell at once. Death and sex in a single day. I remembered the forehead smeared with black dust. Whose ashes, I wondered, or just a barbecue residue? I was a disbeliever even then, while my aunt washed her mouth of a craved snack when she saw the time and wanted communion in the morning. And then there were those who said communion could not be partaken of those who just had sex hours before. The propagation was so sacred to produce new souls. What was wrong about leaping from bed to altar? If God was perfect in all things and he had designed us, what could be wrong in using perfect accoutrements? I asked inconvenient questions in theology, and the boys of basketball hissed at me to be quiet. They wanted A's, and I made the priest angry. I also wondered about heaven. Why would I want it? Like a floating oil slick without substance? Would I enjoy the music of the spheres and the embrace of a gigantic jelly brain? Did I really want wings and eternity? Was sex too real to fit in a platonic projection? The desire, the pull of blood pulsing in the core, the meeting of mouths, the caresses, the male mouth on woman's breast, the sudden entrance, the laughter and joy, the tautness of body, the crescendo of pulses too soon ended. More reality in this act, even when culminated on a bed of dust, smearing dust into silk. What is wrong with being a knowing animal? St. Valentine's means a dinner out, toasts of wine to beddings of the past, and future travel adventures together. Let dust lie unremembered, with all old notions and chains.
Thank you, Virginia. I'm reminded of our church's mission statement is to meet people wherever they are on the journey. And thank you for sharing a unique perspective on the spiritual
I'm the
journey.
lost soul for you.
That's fine. Okay, we're going to give Bob H. another chance. He's going to try to come in by phone. Bob? Okay, you still have to turn the mic on, Bob.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Worth waiting for. Go ahead, Bob.
One sec.
Go ahead, Bob.
I had to go off the other thing because we had an echo. This is called Feel Real. Why must it be one is never free? So much hustle, too much bustle. It gets in the way of what we want to say. Thoughts interrupted, intentions disrupted. Busy climbing the mountain, we miss what's counting. Forgetting to feel what's truly real.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we'll do one more check and make sure I got everybody. Let me just check around the room. Put you all in your Hollywood squares. Okay, I think everyone has read. Kathy, I don't see anyone I missed. Oh, Kathy, what would you like to read, Kathy?
I'm going to quote a poem by a very well-known and loved poet who has passed, named Alan Plans. It's a 2-line poem. I'll read it twice. Life is short, but the island is long. Life is short, but the island is long. That's our fisherman poet on the East End who calls us uplanders, or did.
Yeah.
With that, I think we'll introduce or bring back Karen for a closing poem.
Okay, thank you. I have to find it. Okay. This poem is from my first poetry book called Where Desire Settles. And it's called Blue Asphalt. In the half-warm afternoon of a spring day, 2 women on a porch settee, the breeze soft on their faces, watch a 10-year-old on a 2-wheeler careen up and down the street, spinning her wheels in front of them. Every few minutes, sometimes slowing down when she passes them, not seeing, but knowing they are commenting on the flow of traffic, too much or the lack of it for the time of day, weary of the errant screech of tires hitting asphalt. The child keeps up her rhythmic speed, pretending not to notice, helmet hugging her head, tipping her forward over the bars, pedaling fast, then slow, faster in front of the women when she knows she is being watched, her cargo pants hanging from her waist, shirt sleeves rolled up to her elbows. She is steering her bicycle down a suburban block, a modern-day Argonaut looking to claim her freedom, to move her body on wheels she can balance and handle without falling, not some ancient Greek sailor steering a ship on the Aegean Sea. Just a modern-day child coming into her own, never far from the 2 women watching. She pedals harder before slowing down, like a hero in the book she reads from start to finish. That straight line from here to there, picturing herself a conqueror of sorts before she disembarks to cheers, happy to be home again, proud of her strength and courage, a trip taken and embraced with victory and comfort, undisturbed by everything she cannot know or imagine. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And Kathy, over to you for the last word.
Karen, I can't thank you enough, really. just lovely.
Well, it's my pleasure.
And your reading voice is very soothing, very calming. You know,
Thank
it's
you.
it brings me into your world. I want to thank Dan for doing what he does, which is enormous. We were making changes early this morning even. And I want to thank everyone for coming today. Wonderful, wonderful. Now, next month, I want to just, Margaret, are you available? Yes, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
Margaret will be our next reader. And I just want to say, what is it? It's all with a Marge.
It's all about
I can't
Marg.
quite
It's
read.
all starts with a Marg.
It's all. Ah, okay. I want to say,
It's a
Margaret,
Marg.
am I pronouncing it properly? What is it?
Mar-
Pronounce it?
Mar- It's
You're
Margaret.
not. Margaret.
Mhm.
I don't think anyone pronounces Margaret's name properly. I probably just didn't do it that time either. She will read from her books, and as a teacher of disabled children, it brings you into her world, which is very fascinating, actually. She's become an excellent writer, and I look very much forward. Hope to see everyone here next month. And I thank you all for coming. Now, I'm just going to say one last thing, which is I believe Bruce left us early and many don't come because at 12 noon is Walt Whitman with 2 hours of poetry from people all over the world. It's run by George Wallace. Highly recommend if you want a little bit more poetry on a Saturday morning. And you just have to find it in the email or go to the Walt Whitman Birthplace website. And with that, I'll say, have a great day, everyone. Karen, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.